I am Dr. Supriya Singh, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Vasant Kanya Mahavidyalaya. I welcome you to the course Understanding Deconstruction, a Critical Approach. This is the week 1, lecture 1 of the course, which is a 4 weeks duration course, and the title of today's lecture is Introduction. The whole course has been divided into 4 parts, that is 4 weeks. In the very first week, I would be discussing the idea of deconstruction, how it is dependent upon the theory structuralism, how it is based and built upon structuralism, and how it led to the idea of post-structuralism. Apart from this, I would also deal with the theorists like Ferdinand de Saussure, Claude Lévi-Strauss, and Roland Barthes, who played significantly in making or laying a background of structuralism. In week 2, we would be discussing the various terminologies, the key ideas of deconstruction, particularly laid by the critic Jacques Derrida. And in third week, we would be discussing other deconstructionists, and week 4 would be going with the in-hand practice, or you can say application of deconstruction upon various texts and movies. So this way, I welcome you to the course. Now, being the architect of deconstruction, let us start with Jacques Derrida. Basically, he is the founder of the term deconstruction, and therefore we say that deconstruction is a term originated by this French philosopher Jacques Derrida, who was born in the year 1930 and died in 2004. Growing up in a Jewish family, he faced anti-Semitism, as well as gradually in his lifetime, he has seen World War II. And these two incidents of facing the World War II and the anti-Semitic attitude he had seen significant socio-political challenges that shaped his early worldview. He was also inspired by philosophers such as Edmund Husserl and Martin Heidegger. We should notice that he has done his dissertation upon the philosophy of Edmund Husserl, and he further read Martin Heidegger, with whom he was so much influenced that we see Heidegger's philosophy played significantly in the development of his idea of deconstruction. While reading Heidegger's philosophy, he come to understand to critique the prioritization of presence or origin over absence. So this way, he critiqued this prioritization of presence, he critiqued the metaphysics of presence, and this way he continued critiquing the hierarchical nature that has been developed by metaphysics of presence. He condemned speech over writing, he condemned privileging truth over reality or difference. Thus, Derrida's work indicates a departure from traditional metaphysics. Now, coming to the idea of structuralism and post-structuralism, let us see how the term deconstruction is dependent upon structuralism and how it led to post-structuralism. So let us see what structuralism is. Basically, structuralism focuses that every system has a structure. It focuses on the idea that meaning can't be produced or understood by individual element, rather by studying the underlying structures and relationship with other elements. We can say this, or we can understand this in a much better way, saying that structuralism basically focuses upon structure. According to structuralism, or every system has a structure, and there is some underlying pattern that helps in the functioning of that system. So focusing basically on the language system, Ferdinand de Saussure talked about the idea that meaning can't be understood by individual element or sign, rather by studying the underlying structures and relationship with other signs. So structuralism strict his idea till that every system has a structure and every system functions with that underlying pattern or structure which is in accordance with the functioning of that particular system. Now, talking about post structuralism, let's see that post structuralism is a theory or an idea that emerged in France, and it was built upon structuralism. But ultimately, it gets diverted from it. That is, it was based on structuralism, but it diverted in the due course of time with some gaps, with some differences. So, post structuralism is an intellectual movement that emerged in the 1960s and 1970s, questioning the principles of structuralism, particularly its focus on fixed meanings and structures. It emphasizes the instability and the fluidity of language. We can go with further discussions. That is, somewhere you might have seen that post structuralism is with a hyphen in between post and structuralism, and somewhere it is without a hyphen. Now, what is the difference between the two? So, let us discuss upon it first, and then we'll be going further into understanding of what post structuralism is and how it is different from structuralism. So, post structuralism with a hyphen in between suggests a time period that came after structuralism. However, the same without hyphen features the traits, the trends of this new study. So, when we are studying about a time period, it is with a hyphen, and when we are studying about the traits, it is without a hyphen. Now, post structuralism basically argues that we live in a world where there is no certainty and no fixity, or there is no stable point of reference. Now, what does it mean? How we are living in a decentered world? So, let us understand with the example of a ball. For instance, if we have a ball and on that ball there is no design, no brand mark is there, and it is even from all the side. So if we found that an ant is crawling upon it, we won't be able to locate the position of the ant on the ball because the ball is even from all the side. It is all the same in its pattern throughout, and therefore we won't be able to find where the ant is. We won't be able to give or to suggest the location of the ant. Now, this way, we can say that the ant is without any point of reference. We cannot locate where it is. And this way, when we are talking of a system, Derrida or the post structuralism idea says that we are living in a world without any center, without any margin, without any point of reference, because there is no fixed center, there is no fixed margin, everything comes into question. Now, this way, Derrida and his theory and even post structuralism says that we live in a decentered world in which we do not know how to locate ourselves. Since all positions were seen relative to the center till now, but with the questioning of the center itself, all positions are called into question. Now, in order to understand it in even much better way, let us see that how deconstruction is a major part of post-structuralism. So the difference between deconstruction and post-structuralism is that deconstruction basically talks about the language system, and post-structuralism has even a greater or wider area to discuss. Now, coming to the term deconstruction, we see that it is a core concept in post-structuralism that aims to expose the inherent contradictions in language particularly. And that at initial level, we can understand that the aim of deconstruction is to expose the inherent contradictions in language system by exploring hidden meanings, play of words, and examining binary oppositions. Deconstruction this way can be considered as having its starting point in structuralism, but it was opened up and transformed in the due course, and this way it dismantled structuralism itself and led to post structuralism. So, deconstruction's position is in between structuralism and post structuralism, and it further led for the development of, or it paved the path for the development of post-structuralism. We can even more able to understand it in a more better way by the example of the Derrida's essay, Structure, Sign and Play in the Discourse of Human Sciences. Now, this popular essay actually was written to present in a symposium on structuralism at the Johns Hopkins University. The symposium basically was based on structuralism. However, Derrida presented this paper, which was meant to be a paper on structuralism. He deviated from it by extending the idea of structuralism. He didn't cancel out structuralism, but he extended structuralism and he led or paved the way towards post-structuralism. Broadly speaking, deconstruction is designated as a theory and a practice that aims to read the text to reject the possibility of finding any fixed or definite meaning. Rather, it opens up the possibility for infinite meanings. Post-structuralism this way, while it is not restricted to deconstruction, is identified primarily with it. Now, defining deconstruction, we find that ultimately this way, deconstruction is a critical approach that questions the stability of meaning in text. Basically, it is dependent upon language system only. It is based upon language system only. And therefore, when we come to talk of deconstruction, we see that it is a critical approach that questions the stability of meaning in text. Now, how it questions the stability of meaning, this we are going to discuss in the further lecture as well as in the due course of the course. Deconstruction emphasizes the fluid nature of language and how text can generate multiple interpretations. It calls into question the notion of center, the notion of unity, identity, and thus eradicated any distinction between center and periphery. It questions the idea of center or periphery. According to deconstruction, there is no center and no periphery. According to the context, we can find some as center and other as periphery. In deconstruction, there is no fixed meaning to a word. There is no meaning that is ultimate or final. It questions the fixity of meaning. And since there is no meaning, there is no ultimate meaning, no final meaning, deconstruction dismantles the idea of any fixity or any understanding. Since there is no fixed meaning, there is no fixed understanding. And that is, every meaning is or may be a mismeaning, and every understanding can be a misunderstanding. No absolute meaning or understanding for truth is possible. Truths are always relative and always contextual. This way, the theory goes on with practice of reading a text, and apart from reading, it rejects the possibility of finding a definite meaning, rather it goes on to explore the traces, the multiple traces, and the multiple possible meanings. Now we can say that, now we are in a position to say that there is no fixed meaning, rather, deconstruction goes on to explore more and more meanings, multiple of meanings, multiple of traces. And this way, deconstruction questions any stability in the language system. Thus, deconstruction is not a method but a way of thinking that equips professionals, critics, writers, etc., with a critical lens through which to navigate diverse contexts. Deconstruction doesn't offer a solution or a replacement. It is not going to give any solution oriented meaning. Rather, it is more about multiple meanings, more meanings, unpacking or looking for behind the text. It is about questioning, it is about exploring, it is about encouraging critical thinking, revealing multiple interpretations, disrupting hierarchies, and enhancing language sensitivity. This way, now at least we are in a position to say that Jacques Derrida revolutionized contemporary philosophy with his concept of deconstruction, challenging traditional notions of metaphysics of presence, as well as of meaning and interpretation. Now, there comes a question, what is metaphysics of presence? So, I'm going to deal it further in this lecture. So, this way, we see that Derrida comes up to challenge the traditional notion of metaphysics of presence, which was there since the time of Aristotle till the modern time of Nietzsche. But with Heidegger and now with Derrida particularly, we come up with a situation where this notion of metaphysics of presence has been critiqued, has been challenged. Now, we see that there are three seminal works of Derrida, that is of grammatology, speech and phenomena, writing and difference. Now, coming one by one, first I'm starting with speech and phenomena. We see that this particular work focuses on critique of Edmund Husserl's phenomenology, because Husserl basically believed that in inner speech we have unmediated sort of access to meaning, and Derrida challenges this idea of Husserl. In his next work, Writing and Difference, we see that it is a collection of essays that apply deconstruction to various fields, that is literature, philosophy, psychoanalysis, anthropology, and so on. Now, coming to the most important work of Derrida, that is of grammatology, we see that it deconstructs the Western philosophy, privileging speech over writing. It prioritizes the term like logos, reason, speech, presence, and so on. Now, coming again to the Western metaphysics about which I was talking in the previous slide, we see that this particular book of grammatology critiques the idea of metaphysics of presence, because metaphysics of presence is a term that is very popular in the Western academia. This term means prioritizing logos, reason, speech, or presence, and it devalues writing as secondary or derivative. This metaphysics of presence, according to Derrida, prioritizes the presence and the idea that meaning is directly present in speech and immediate experience. So, Derrida discards this idea. he upturns the binary and goes on to develop a new idea in the third stage when he dismantles the hierarchy. I will discuss it in further lecture. Now, regarding metaphysics of presence, what it is, let us discuss in detail. Metaphysics of presence. The tendency in Western thought from the time of Aristotle to Nietzsche, we see that Western academia has always privileged presence. It always privileged essence and identity, often at the expense of absence, difference, or context. Now, it starts when we go into the origin of the term metaphysics of presence, we see that it starts with Aristotle's definition of time in the most influential work in Western philosophy, that is his book Physics, particularly the book 4 of Physics, where he has given a simplified definition of time. Now, according to Aristotle's definition of time, time is the number of motion in respect of before and after. Here, time can be minute, it can be hour, it can be days, etc. Where we always talk of present and the past and the future is seen in respect to the present. So we are prioritizing present and the past and the future is always seen in respect to the present. In order to understand this better, what Aristotle has said is that time has motion. Time is the number of motion. So for Aristotle, motion isn't just physical movement, rather it suggests any kind of change. Like it suggests growth, there may be alteration, there may be change. So time is not movement or motion itself, but it is a way of counting or measuring motion. It involves how the mind recognizes a sequence, what comes before and what comes after. This time is always seen in present, and the past and the future, or the before and the after, is in reference to it, that is in reference to present. This time is connected to the order or sequence of change. We understand time because we perceive a succession of events. Time depends on change, and if nothing changes, there's obviously nothing to measure. So, for Aristotle, time would have no meaning if there is no change or no motion. So, time is basically dependent upon motion. It is continuous, time is continuous, but it is also countable. For example, we have a line and it is made up of points. So this way time is also in a continuous sequence, but we can count moment within it. This means that time is not an independent entity, rather it can be measured with respect to the succession of changes. Time is as if not an independent entity, it is merely before and after in context to present. Now, deconstruction says that considering metaphysics of presence means as if life has meaning only in present. Now, the whole focus is upon present. It has no worth in past or future, and both are dependent upon present. This way, we are prioritizing present. This suggests that present is always prioritized, and past and future are always seen in respect to present. That is, man lives only in present, and Western academia has always believed in present. And this metaphysics of presence is critiqued by Derrida. And similarly, he also critiqued the prioritization of speech over writing, saying that speech is preferred only because it ensures presence of the speaker and hence it is more real. Speech is heard in present, while writing is meant for future reading. This way, perhaps now we are able to understand how deconstruction is an idea that critiques the long lasting idea of presence or metaphysics of presence. And this way, Derrida comes up to dismantle the structure, the idea of fixity, which was till now quite popular in the Western academia. So, with this, I would like to stop here, and in the next lecture, we would be discussing how deconstruction has been built upon the idea that was based or that was built by Ferdinand de Saussure in his theory of structuralism, and how deconstruction is built upon the idea of structuralism without cancelling it out. It is just an extension of it.